Most speakers who want to get paid more think the answer is getting better on stage. Better delivery, better slides, more confidence, more polish. Here's the problem with that. Today's guest flew to England, spoke for free, used a 7-second script he paid $4,000 to learn, and walked away with his first £10,000 speaking engagement. Not because he was the most polished speaker in the room, but because he asked the right question at the right moment in a way that felt completely natural. Clinton Young is a keynote speaker, coach, and someone who has thought harder than most about what actually makes a speaker world-class, referable, and paid. In this conversation, we get into reps, presence, vulnerability, improv, humor, and the commercial thinking that most speakers never touch. And yes, that script is in the episode, so have something ready to write with. Ready? Let's get into it. Well, it's not very often that I have guests on the show who I've met in person and even hung out with, and so I'm very happy to bring onto the show Clinton Young. Welcome, Clinton.
John, it's so great to be here and spend time with you, man.
I missed the time we got to hang out in Nashville a few years back. We had a lot of fun there, so it's really good to see you again. And well, I'm going to start our conversation the same way I like to start many conversations on the show, with asking you, in terms of the speaking world and the way you work in it, are there any sort of positions or opinions you have that are a little counterintuitive or even contrarian to what you hear other people saying?
Yeah, absolutely, John. As a professional keynote speaker, and I've coached quite a few people in the speaking space, they come to me and they ask me, like, Clinton, how do I become world class? Like, how do I become a great speaker? Like, what do I need to do? And they're like, give me the tips, give me the tricks. Anyone ever say that to you? Give me the tips. Like, what are the key tips? And I always say, that's great. That's really, really great. You definitely need to know those. In fact, I have an amazing gift for all the audience members here and the listeners. If you go to worldclassspeakersecrets.com, you can actually get my top 7 world-class speaker secrets. And those are the tips. And they're very important. But I always like to say, what does it take to become world-class? And just so we're on the same page, I just want to define what I mean by world-class. What I mean is, I don't mean you're going to become the next Tony Robbins or Lisa Nichols, right? Or Mel Robbins, for that matter. What I mean is, how do you go and when you speak, whether you're a professional keynote speaker or a workshopper, or maybe you're an entrepreneur who speaks to grow their business. That's a lot of the people that I work with. No matter who it is, when you speak, you are just never going to impact 100% of the room. You're just never going to do it, right? There's always going to be someone in the front row that's going like this, and maybe you can get them to uncross their arms. Maybe you can't, but there's usually about 10% of the people you're just not going to be able to touch. And if you're not a world-class speaker, it's going to be even higher of a percentage that you're not going to be able to impact. So what I mean by world-class is, again, it doesn't mean you're going to become the person that's going to travel around the world and speak everywhere and make $50,000 a speech. But what it is how do you increase that percentage likelihood that you're going to impact that room? How can you increase that to 92%, 95%, 98%? How can you move that up the measurement, if you will, so that you can impact the greatest number of people in that room possible? Okay. And there's 3 primary things that I say that you need. And one of them is the world-class speaker secrets, and what you teach your students around presenting, having influence on stage, right? Stage craft, if you will. Yeah. But there's also 2 other things that are equally, if not more important, I would argue, and that is authenticity and vulnerability. Authenticity and vulnerability. I share stories sometime where you see somebody who speaks and they could even be possibly not even that good of a speaker, but they're super authentic. They're speaking from the heart. They're speaking from truth, and they're actually willing to be vulnerable. That is way supersedes world-class speaker skills any day of the week. It's important to have all 3 if you really want to make the biggest impact, and of course, income as well, and get those referrals. But I would argue that those 2 are even more important than world-class speaker secrets.
No, I think I'd agree. I've been more moved and connected with people who have expressed vulnerability and empathy and connection and authenticity on the stage in those sorts of ways than I have with people who've been slick and polished and everything else. It's like
Right.
those things may be great to have. It could make someone look like a really good speaker, and they sort of say, I guess that's more the stamp of being an authority, experienced authority in the space. But the connection, relationship stuff, yeah, that's very much the vulnerability and authenticity. So I'd agree with you on that. I think you're right as well. Too many people saying those things. We think it's all about getting on stage and being confident and being super high energy, whatever else. And there's so much more to it. It could be a bit of a journey, right? And it should be. It's like even with your 7 secrets to being a world-class speaker, you can know them and you can still not be a world-class speaker. It
Yeah.
could still take you a long time to be able to master the skills or really get where you want to be with that. But let me see, what was your journey like? I mean, I know some of it, but for our listener, what was your journey like to moving into speaking and becoming a paid speaker?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that. And I'm gonna go back just a quick sec to something that you shared around the process of like what does it take to become world class? Well, if you think about a world class athlete, John, what do? They do a couple of things, right? Three primary things. Every day throughout the week, choose your favorite sport. I'll say American football because the Super Bowl is coming up here. So you've got all throughout the week. What are we doing? We're practicing, right? We're practicing all throughout the week to play one game. One game. So you practice all throughout the week to play one game. And so if you want to become world class, you've got to put the reps in. Period. You've got to put the reps in. The basic building block of any learning, any growth, any mastery is awareness. It's awareness. It's a deepening level of awareness, right? So how do we deepen that level of awareness? We do it through reps. Get the reps every single time you do it, you get a deepened level of awareness. So that's number one. Number two is what do they do after these world-class athletes? What do they do after practice? They watch what? They watch the game tape, don't they? They watch the game tape. So if you're a speaker who's not willing to watch yourself on camera, oh, it feels weird. But who cares? Do you want to be world class or do you want to be average? Right? Do you want to get referrals from stage or do you not? Do you want to grow your business or not? Right? So you've got to watch the game tape because as you watch the game tape, you get a deepened level of awareness, right? So that's number two. Number three is you've got to hire a coach, right? Michael Jordan, I would say the best basketball player of all time. A lot of people say LeBron James, Kobe Bryant. Who did they have? They had a coach. Tiger Woods, who did they have? A coach, right? You have to have a coach because a coach like John can see around the corner, right? A coach like John can see things that you'll just not ever see when you look at your game tape, right? So I would say those three things you absolutely have to do. So what did I do? I did exactly those three things, right? Before I even knew these three things and put this whole model together, this framework, I went out and I got massive reps, like massive reps. I was going to Rotaries, and you can speak for free at Rotary clubs here in the US. I'm sure there's similar civic organizations around the UK. I've spoken a lot in the UK, but I've never spoken at a civic organization, probably in Spain as well, or wherever you're listening to this from around the world. There's Kiwanis clubs here in the US. There's Lions clubs. You could also utilize Toastmasters. Not really a place you're going to go to become a professional speaker, right? I
Sure.
use it more like a gymnasium where you go and it's just a place where you can speak, right? So that is what I did. I watch the game tape constantly. Every single time I speak, I record. Even if I'm doing podcasts, I record because there's a number of reasons why we do that. Not only from a being able to watch the game tape perspective and have your coach watch it to help you get better, but you got to also use that for your marketing, obviously.
Yeah,
And
I'd
then I
agree.
hired a coach. I actually hired multiple coaches. Some of them were Hall of Fame speakers in the National Speakers Association here in the United States. And I just committed to actually becoming a professional speaker. And in order to commit to it, you got to take the actions. It's not just going to happen.
So you say you were doing all this stuff before you knew to do this stuff. I mean, what was there like a background for you of going to that level for other things that you've done that you said, like, "So I did that that's what I did for this, so that's what I'm going to do here."
I just know that Speaking for me is my healthy obsession. Tony Robbins talks about this thing called your healthy obsession. John, I'm the guy that will go on a trip and you'll find me sneaking into the ballroom at 6 a.m., getting up on stage and delivering my full hour-long keynote speech to 500 empty chairs on full 10 out of 10 enthusiasm. Like I just geek out on speaking. So if you love speaking, or if speaking can help you grow your business or yourself and your income, your confidence, then you've got to commit to it. Like, it's just like anything. Those people who actually put in the work, not to overquote Tony Robbins, but he says people are rewarded in public for what they practice for years in private. People are rewarded
100%.
in public for what they practice for years in private. So if you want something, you've got to put in the work. So I guess I just knew that maybe from my sports days back in the day in high school. I didn't play in college, but in high school. And I went out, and I always am somebody who also, in my career before I became a professional speaker, I would always flow to the things that are my greatest skill set, right? I'm very much about self-awareness, radical self-awareness. Because again, awareness is the basic building block of change and of growth. So self-awareness, I always knew that I gravitated towards roles in sales, leadership, and they just generally would have an opportunity to be like, here's the mic. Like, you got to stand up and talk to 3 people or 5 people or 100 people. So as I continue to follow that, and I encourage anyone out there in your careers, one of the things that I did is I got an opportunity for a company that had events. Now, they didn't have events when I first went there. I actually started working for this coaching company, and I was the head of their recruiting. And they didn't really have a recruiting department. So what did I do? I crafted a part of that role to match my gifts. And I went out to colleges and I would speak. 8 years later, I find myself traveling all around the United States. This company did 4,000 events a year, and I was on stage at usually like 2 a month. I would be traveling around the country, and I would get opportunities to get the reps. Was I talking about my topic? No, but I was getting the reps, right? I
Yeah.
was getting the reps. So I
So
would say
important.
follow your flow, right? Follow your flow in your career and find opportunities to get the reps.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of the things, having coached other speakers for a long time now, is one of the things that I see most commonly people are falling short in. They don't want to put in the reps. Like you say, I probably go more for music analogies than sports, but you would never, as a professional musician, go and perform in a concert or anywhere without having rehearsed, without having practiced and being able to know that you can deliver pretty much perfectly, that you're so well practiced that you don't really have to think about it that much, is somewhat embodied in you. That's what comes with putting in the reps and the stage time. And I think that's what a lot of people don't get to, is like, this has come up a few times in conversations recently with guests of that thing of a lot of people saying, "Oh, improv is such an important skill for speakers." Like,
Mm.
yeah, 100%. But how do you improv if your brain's full of trying to remember your talk because you
Literally.
haven't been practicing it? And that's what you have to focus on. I see this especially like almost in microcosm in the comedy circuit, 'cause I do like stand-up comedy around where I live, and I see there's a big difference between comedians who've prepared their set and comedians who are just kind of like, "Oh, all right, what shall I talk about?" Or let's flick through my notebook and find some jokes.
Yeah.
It's like people don't stay engaged with it. They're tuning out in the bits where you're like, "All right, let me just look in my notepad and see what jokes I wrote down." Showing up prepared is so critical, and so few people do it. And I think it's in one sense, it's the easiest thing to do because it's also, all right, obviously, that is an important thing to do, but it's also the hardest thing to do because that is a level of commitment that most people are not willing to put in. And as you rightly say, that's what separates you from into being world class from other people.
Yeah. I would just want to add something to that, John. Confidence is a skill. It's not a trait. And I want people to really get that. It's a little counterintuitive as well. Confidence is a skill. Some people are like, oh, they were born to do that. Confidence is a skill. Yes, we all have different personalities, but confidence can be learned. You can grow in your confidence, and you do that by having courage, right, to take action in spite of fear. right? Anytime you have an opportunity to take action, it's generally going to be a little bit of fear, a little bit of doubt will creep in. You've got to run towards those fears, because as you run towards those fears, those limiting beliefs, the things that stop you begin to crumble, begin to fade away, because you get more awareness, right? And there's 4 levels of learning I think will be useful for the audience to if I can just kind of go through these 4 levels.
Yeah, go for it.
So, and this just is going to prove that every single one of you can become a world-class speaker, whatever that means to you, right? Again, for me, it means you're going to be impactful from stage. You're going to get the result you're looking for, which is getting a referral, getting that next opportunity to speak. So the first level is, and we all start here with everything in life, we are unconsciously incompetent, right? We don't even know what we don't know, right? We don't even know we don't. We think about a little baby. They can't tie their shoes. They don't even know they have shoes. They don't even know they have feet. Although, yes, they do, because they're always like grabbing their feet, right? Doing a little happy baby pose. But they don't know that they can't tie their shoes. They don't even know what they don't know. And that's not where most of us are. Most of us know what we don't know in terms of speaking. And that would be the second level, where we are now consciously incompetent, right? This is where a lot of us start. We're consciously incompetent. Speaking is one of the greatest fears of everyone on the planet. I think it's ahead of death in most, like death by fire, I believe. It's ahead of that.
It's been said, yeah. I still think killer clowns top the list for me, but yeah.
So we become conscious of our incompetence, and that's where we're really scared. But we've got to have the courage to take action, because every single one of you, if you're listening to this podcast, that is proof that you have what it takes to become a speaker. You would not be here today listening to this podcast, following John, if you were not capable of becoming a professional speaker. So you've got to push through, have the courage and take those actions to actually become the third level of competence, which is, or learning, which is consciously competent. Now you are conscious of your competence. And this is where probably 90% of your listeners are as speakers. They're consciously competent. But what does that make them do? This speaks to what you were just referring to. Now they're up in their head, right? They're trying to remember, what was I going to say next? Or is this the right thing? Or they're like, okay, John said to do this, or Clinton said to do this, or this is the speaker's secret, I'm going to do this, right? And they're in their head and they're not in their heart. And what are they not? They might have great skill, but they're not going to be authentic and they're not going to be vulnerable, right? So you have to be willing for this to get a little bit ugly before it gets pretty. You have to be committed to the outcome, which is the next level, which is unconscious competence. And this is where you can show up on stage. And yes, you have to prepare. This is how you get there. You have to get the reps in. You have to get the reps in so many times that it's in your bones. It's in the marrow of your bones, where you show up and you know your intro, you know your close, you know all your stories you're going to tell, and you've got a couple slides that have a couple points on them that are going to guide you to the next step, and you're able to be present, to be in the moment. I know you talk a lot about being present and being really, really in that moment. Well, that's the way to do it. But you have to be willing to be a little bit uncomfortable along the way to get to that place of comfort, right?
Yeah.
And even then, you're still going to be nervous. I've been on thousands of stages all around the world, and I'm nervous every time I go on stage. But there are ways
100%.
You develop mastery to transmute that energy. And perhaps I can share that in a moment. Transmute that energy away from, is my fly down? Am I going to remember what I'm saying? To shift your concern from yourself to that of the quote unquote collective pain in the room, in your audience. You want to focus on what is the pain that they have that I'm uniquely designed to solve, right? And when you focus on that and shift your concern to them, that's where you can just relax and your shoulders drop and you're present.
Yeah, I think you expressed that really well, because I agree with pretty much all of that, and in various words and similar ways, I've said a lot of similar things on the show, and I agree that confidence is not only learnable. I think it's that thing that comes when you get to that unconscious competence level of that to me is embodiment. That is presence. That's the only way you can be present and not in your own head, is to have practice. I always know there's that thing of, again, I probably go more to musical references, but it can come with many different areas. Or if I'm learning to play a piece of music, I'm going to practice it, and practice it is going to suck at first. No one's going to want to listen to it. In fact, I wouldn't let anybody listen to it when I'm practicing it because it's going to sound horrible. But I'm also going to be breaking it down and building it up again and trying to get smooth with it. But it's only when I get to that sort of thing of, right, well, I know it now and my fingers know what to do and it's all
Mm,
kind of happening and I don't really have to think about it, that I can start to inject myself into it, let it flow through me, put the energy and presence and emotion into what I'm playing, add my flair, add my style.
mm,
How can you do that otherwise if your focus is on the notes, still on the notes you have to play, rather than the notes kind of, the music kind of plays you instead? I think
yeah.
it applies to so many other parts of your life. But there's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why I called my business Present Influencers. Like the present, yeah, it's presenting, but it's about being present so much, and that's the
Yeah.
level we need to get to.
You mentioned comedy a few minutes ago, John. I'm going to share something about improv comedy that is real. It's a really great access point to get to this space of being present, being in the moment, right? And I have another gift that folks can grab if they want at blacksheephabits.com. These are some of the top habits that the top fighter pilots, world-class Olympic athletes, top CEOs on the planet, they practice these black sheep habits to be able to go from ordinary to extraordinary, right? To get those results, to get clarity, to get focus, to get in action. And one of the things that it's really aligned with the black sheep habits is something that you can get through practicing improv comedy. Now, I know that freaks out probably a lot of people right now. They're like, oh my goodness, improv comedy, I'm going to be on stage. Oh, love the spotlight on me. You're a stand-up comedian as well, that's like one of my biggest fears, but one of my greatest bucket list items. And I've been on
Do
thousands of
it,
stages and
Clinton.
I'm
Do it.
scared
Do it.
shitless of it. But
No,
I
it's
want
not
you to hold me
scary.
accountable to it. John is one of my coaches, by the way. You coached me in Nashville. You coached the crap out of me there at our lunch session. But I want you to hold me accountable, John, because I want to, in 2026, I want to get on stage. I want to take a stand-up comedy class. So hold me to that, first of all. But let's
Let
go
me
back to,
let me share something with you very
please,
quickly
please.
that
Go
that
ahead.
might just help you, because
Okay.
I was a bit like you. I put it off and put it off, and eventually just sort of I kept saying I wanted to do it, but kept putting it off. And then it got to the point where one of my friends just called me out on it. Bless her heart. Thank you so much for doing that, Ida. And I just thought, yeah, I'm gonna do it. Let's just go
Yeah.
for it. Let's go do it. But in preparation for doing it, I was really nervous. But the thing that happened that made it all okay was I gave myself 100% permission to bomb on that stage. It's like, it's
Wow.
absolutely fine. I welcome it. Bombing, being successful, getting the laughs is a bonus. Just getting up on the stage and doing this, that's the win here.
Yes.
This the first time there's no expectation. Once I took that expectation away, and to be honest, I wasn't first up as well. So I saw a few people bomb before me, and that made it even more okay. It was fine. It was like there was no pressure. I could get up. Yeah, I was still nervous a bit, but I got up on the stage and I was able to enjoy the experience. And I would suggest any for yourself or anyone who wants to do this, give yourself that 100% permission to bomb. Nobody is expecting you to get up on stage and be a
Yeah.
top level comedian. So
Correct. Love it. Awesome. Well, I take that challenge and I will tell myself that I have permission to bomb and I'm going to practice like hell so I don't bomb. But it's okay. I'll be totally detached from it. So improv comedy, I believe, is actually a spiritual practice. I'm going to get a little woo woo on you. I'm
okay,
in SoCal, baby, so it's
go for
okay.
it. Yeah,
We're
yeah.
not going to sing kumbaya, but so one of the black sheep habits is meditation. We all probably know what that is, right? Close your eyes. There's plenty of ways to do it. Think of nothing, and immediately you're going to think of everything, because that's how meditation works until you get practice and it quiets your mind, right? So it's a great way to create a gap in your thoughts, in your stimulus to response. Something happens, we stub our toe, boom, we're like, damn it, whatever we say. And you gave me permission to swear, to curse in the show notes. So I'm going for it, baby. So it is a spiritual practice, because check this out. Check this out. Again, meditation quiets the mind, creates a gap so that when that thing does happen, you do stub your toe. Now you have a moment to pause and then choose your actual response. Instead of reacting, you're responding, right? So with my rudimentary understanding of improv, and I've taught some classes around it more as workshops for leaders. I do that sometimes as an add-on to my keynotes for some of the leaders. And I'm definitely not the world class. I'm not like the world's preeminent improv guy. Okay. I've just taken several classes and I've also taught several workshops utilizing it because it's a great tool to grow in your self-awareness. I said it's the number one building block of any growth, right? Grow in your self-awareness, your leadership, your communication, your team building. It's a phenomenal way and a tool to utilize. And it's a great thing to learn as well, by the way, to have an add-on when you go and you deliver a keynote speech. That could be the thing that separates you from the other person that doesn't have that. And you can throw that in for free because you're already there so that you get your fees. Is making sense? But check this out. This is why it's a spiritual practice. My understanding of it is it creates what I like to call, and I don't like to call it, it's called neuroplasticity. Now, John, I'm a little bit of a psychology geek. I have my master's in organizational psych, and I've been geeking out on.
I read Lloyd, so I
So you get what I'm saying here.
yeah.
So check this out. The games that I teach, anyways, in my improv workshops, they literally are designed failure games, right? Design failure games. So they're designed for your brain to naturally think to do one thing, but the way to win the game is to not do that thing. So we have so much natural stimulus response because of the way our brains have been programmed and wired and we've lived our lives, that we have this automaticity that lives in our unconscious brain, right? And it's almost like a record, like old school records, right? With a needle, it just goes around and it stays in the groove. Improv is like scratches the record, picks up the needle and puts it in a different place. That's the way to win the game. So your brain wants to do A, B, and then C, but to win the game, your brain has to go A, P, and then Z, right? In order to win the game. So it creates this natural space where you can pause, this neuroplasticity in the way that you think, so that you have the ability to have more control, more presence, and more power in your communication. Now, tell me that's not useful when you're on stage leading a keynote, or you're doing a workshop and it starts to get raucous, or you want to make it get a little bit raucous, but be able to control it. Tell me that's not useful to have that skill in your bag.
100%. 100%. In fact, I will say, doing some improv, not classes, but there is an improv group here in Valencia where I live, in English, thankfully, because I don't think I can manage in Spanish. But I haven't done that much. Like yourself, I've done workshops and things like that. I know I can do it. But like I said, the only way to get good at it, put in the reps and build up that sort of say the mental plasticity. They need to build up the pathways, because you only get good at doing improv by doing improv. It's like anything, really. It makes perfect sense. But yeah, I am just think of it from that sense of like you're on the stage and maybe you want to be able to adapt stuff to the audiences that you're with, and you don't necessarily always feel confident to do that, but with some improv practice and with that presence that you have because you've rehearsed your stuff really well, you will have the flexibility to do that stuff. So when you see other people thinking doing that and thinking I could never do that, this is the pathway to get to doing that. And it's like, yes, you can, you just can't right now.
You got to be willing to do the reps, right? And go through a little bit of pain, because, growth is never comfortable, John, but it is always worth it. Growth is never, ever, ever comfortable, but it's always worth it. And once you get those reps in and you have this ability to be in the moment and not rely on your brain and memory of, oh, what was I going to say next? But instead you're authentic, you're vulnerable, you're in your body, you're present. All of a sudden somebody's phone rings in the first row in this big keynote message. You're like, hey, just take a message for me. Will you do that for me? Right? You can play with the things that happen. An alarm goes off, right? You can make a joke and not let it be like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do now? Like, oh, what slide? Like, you're in the moment and you can play with it. Everything that happens this is a key thing to write down. Everything that happens in your speech was supposed to happen. And when you treat it that way, it becomes fun. It becomes a game and it's playful, and people want you to succeed on stage, right? But they can feel it when you're in your head and you're nervous. So just be with them. But it's
Right.
going to take reps. It takes reps to get there, baby.
There's the thing. People worry about messing up on stage and could use other words, but I'm trying to keep my mouth clean today. I don't know why, but people worry about messing up on stage, and then when it happens, inevitably because they're focused on it, they get embarrassed. They go quiet, whatever, and then the audience gets like mirror neurons and all that sort of stuff. The audience gets
Yeah.
embarrassed for them because they're embarrassed. Whereas if they kind of shrugged, it didn't bother them with that, the audience is gonna be cool. They go, "All right, you're
Mm.
fine. Yeah, there's no problem here." And we keep going. It's like that's a big difference. It's
Yeah.
like being able to sort of shake it off really quick and just say, "Yeah, all right, yeah," like you say, it's part of the presentation now, so it was meant to
Mhm.
be that. And if you can actually incorporate it in some way that does come with practice,
Yeah.
even better, even better. But yeah, I've had people falling off stages, having their stilettos break whilst they've been presenting, all sorts of things. We even had, I think many speakers, myself included, had fire alarms going off when you're
Oh,
on
yeah.
stage. It's like, you have to be able to handle all this, be able to bend with the breeze and not break.
Yeah. 100%. I mean, literally, I have completely forgot where I was in a speech before. And I've literally been like, hey, John, front row, like, cause I went up, maybe gave me a high five earlier. John, where was I again? What was I just talking about? Right. I've literally done that on a speech that I got paid to deliver. And the audience is like, oh, you're right here. This is what you were talking about. Like it's endearing. You're human, right? You don't have to be like, oh, what was I gonna say? And you like fake it. No, just lean into it. Hey, dude, I forgot where
Yeah,
I was, man. What day is
that's
it again? Where are
vulnerability.
we? What's
Yeah,
the name of your company? Right? Make a joke out of it, right? But you can only get to that place when you've actually like practiced enough where you're just comfortable in your skin.
yeah. Let me ask you something, because
Yeah.
I'm curious about this, and it's maybe a little sidebar to some of the things we said we're going to discuss today, but it's relevant to what we're talking about. So there's a lot of speakers who say you don't have to be that joke in the speaking associations, right? You don't have to be funny to speak unless you want to get paid. But I do know speakers. In fact, I just recently have interviewed a world famous speaker who is not funny in his talks, and I do think even for him, he has sometimes struggled with bookings because of that. I don't know
Mm.
100% but I have a feeling that that might be the case, that because he's not funny, and he says he's not funny, and yet I think he can be. In fact, I've known him to be funny. When we interviewed, he could be funny. And I think become that mindset of, for him, I'm not funny. So he doesn't even try to have a bit of, I don't know, dry humor or some droll jokes in there. No dad jokes or whatever you want to put in there. Is like stuff that might sort of change the tone. But how important do you feel that element is in speaking in general?
1000% important. 1000% important. In fact, one of my world-class speaker secrets is induce laughter. Write that down. Induce laughter. Okay. Now I'm gonna lean into this in a couple different ways. It's gonna be very impactful for people. And I'm actually gonna give you a resource of a person that I highly recommend that you see if he's available for hire. I hired him as well. He's a professional comedian who's a stand-up comedian who's also a professional speaker. I don't even know if he does this anymore, but I hired him to look at my hour-long keynote, Reigniting the Human Spirit. That's my keynote. I've delivered all around the world. And I said, dude, I know I can be funny. Show me where the best parts are to be funny. And he taught me so many things. In fact, I'll teach one thing right now. It's called jab, jab, right hook. And this is the name I made it. And I know Gary Vee talks about jab, right hook in marketing, but this is my jab, jab, right hook in speaking. Okay. And that is, you want to, especially in the beginning, you want to get agreement within the first 30 seconds that you know the pain of that audience. That's number one, within the first 30 seconds. And you want to make them laugh within that first 30 seconds as well. If you can, that is your goal. Like as a stand-up comedian, isn't it like laughs per minute or something like that you're looking for? Something like that. They literally measure laughs per minute as a stand-up
They do.
comedian. You
Yeah.
don't need to necessarily worry about that. But I always like to say, we as professional speakers or entrepreneurs who speak to grow our business, we need to earn the right to maintain our audience's attention every 9 seconds. Every 9 seconds. Now I'm kind of making this up, right? 75% of statistics are made up on the spot. Okay. And that's not funny jokes. See, that's funny, right? It's kind of funny. You're not looking for gut busters, by the way, every single time. You're looking for a crack of a smile. Okay. And the way that you can induce laughter, and I'll come back to the jab, jab, right hook, is you can literally say something and then just smile. Right? When you smile, there's something called mirror neurons, John talked about earlier. People want to be like you, right? And they can actually see those. Aren't even mirror. They can just see you smiling. They're naturally going to just a little crease in their mouth. Some people might laugh who are a little bit more excitable. Some people might just be like, huh, right? But you want to induce laughter, right, John? Right? And you like throw in a little fake laugh. Now that was totally fake right there, but like throw it in, induce laughter, smile, throw in a little laugh at your own jokes. So that's a couple things. But the jab, jab, right hook, right out of the gate, you can ask like 3 questions. The power of 3, right? It's a beautiful thing about 3. So you could ask 2 things that are relevant to that audience that speaks to their pain, right? Like how many of you out there are looking to get booked and paid to speak and you're just really, really struggling right now? Anybody? Okay. How many of you have like tried it and you've tried X, Y, and Z and it just hasn't worked? Anybody? Okay. And how many of you are just like ready for lunch? It's like, that's kind of a silly example. It has nothing to do with the pain, nothing to do with what they thought you were going to say. And that's the key. You never want your audience to know what you're going to say next, because that's when they tune out. Then their brain literally unconsciously just goes, I already know what's going to happen. So one of the ways to earn the right to maintain their attention is to do this jab, jab, right hook. And you can do this right out of the gate to get agreement that you're the guy or gal who knows their pain, number 1, and then to throw them off a little bit. And even if you just crack a smile, it doesn't matter if there's no laughter in the audience, just crack a smile. It's like popcorn.
No.
It's like popcorn.
Look,
Right?
I've even said to a speaker before now who I was working, because his delivery was so dry, very sort of very deep voice, and sounded a bit sort of college lectury. And that one of the things he said at the start of his talk, or very close to it, is, how many of you think you'll still be awake by the end of this talk? It wakes them up. They're like, all right, he's not taking himself too seriously. Maybe this isn't going to be so boring after all. It really worked in that situation. It's like,
And that would be a good
he's
thing to
not a
do, just
comedian.
as a principle, to say that as the 3rd question.
Right.
Get their engagement with pain. That you want them to almost feel like a hypochondriacal. You want the audience to say, I think I have that pain. This is marketing 101, right? What is the greatest pain of your audience? Ask a question. They're like opting in. That's me. And then you say that funny thing. How many of you think you'll still be awake by the end of this? Or how many of you aren't going to raise your hand no matter what I ask? Right? It's something they're not expecting to hear, and it will crack a smile. And then throughout the talk, there's so many things we could teach right now about getting into the audience, high-fiving people, getting them to engage. There's something called accelerated learning, right? Which ultimately activates both sides of the brain. And you can do that as a speaker by asking them to say, give me an, oh yeah, right? Or you do the call in response. Call in what? Call in response, right? To get them to say things, high five your neighbor, turn to your neighbor and say, I got this, right? Write this down. Using music during journaling exercises, using different colored pens when they're taking notes. These are all the different ways that you can activate both sides of their brain and create contrast. And these are the ways that you can get them engaged. And then it's going to pop, 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 pop. Before you know it, you say a joke, you're inducing laughter. Now the whole room is laughing. The whole room is laughing by the end of the talk. They're with you.
I got trained to know all that stuff by T Harv Eker. It's like, he does all of that.
One of the best.
Yeah, one of the best. But interestingly, I think this stuff is so important, and I want to sort of get to one more thing with the time that we have. I had people on the show to talk about sales before. I've not really had many people on who perhaps are more able to speak specifically to selling and speaking. And I just sort of wonder for you, like, you are a sales expert is one of your real gifts. I know that. What advice, what sort of clues could you offer for a speaker who are thinking, oh, well, he's getting 10,000 plus a gig, and I'm sort of getting like maybe scraping $500 here, 1,000 or 2 there, and it's like, how do I get to that? What could you offer that speaker?
How can they get from that 0 to 10 grand or wherever they're at to 10 grand? Great question, John. So, I mean, you've got to start somewhere, right? At the end of the day, you get paid directly commensurate with the value of the problem that you solve, right? You get paid in direct correlation to the value of the problem that you solve. So what problem are you solving? One of the things that John taught me early on was you have to really know what problem you're solving. And you have to be crystal clear about that problem that you're solving. And the audience needs to know that. But also, the decision maker who's going to hire you, more importantly, needs to know that you can solve their problem. In fact, you need to become better at articulating that problem than the business owner or the conference leader is at articulating the problem. You need to fall in love with the problem you solve versus your solution. I would say is the number one thing. Fall in love with the problem that you solve versus your solution. Because at the end of the day, they don't really care about your solution. And I hate to say it, they don't really care about your story. You and I have coached a ton of speakers, and a lot of people are like, I have such a great story. And I'm like, that's great. And you need that. You need a story. You don't need to have climb Mount Kilimanjaro with one leg and you're blind. You don't need that, right? 99% of paid speakers don't have a crazy story like that, right? You just hear about the ones who do. But most people don't, and you don't need it. What you need to do is be able to know how to speak to the pain of that collective pain in that room. And you need to be able to communicate that effectively in your marketing and in your conversations. And from stage, I'm going to say one last thing to help people get to that 10K, and I'll tell you how I got my first 10K in a moment. But you need to be able to speak to and prove to that decision maker that you can solve their audience's problem. That is the number one thing. And I'll just share, I'll leave them with this unless you have any other questions. The way that I got my first 10K gig, it was actually in jolly old England, your stomping ground, original stomping ground. And I went over there I got a free gig. I flew all the way to England for a free gig. They paid for my trip, don't get me wrong. And there was other business opportunities there. So it made sense for me to take that trip. And this was in 2018. And I get over there, and you got to write this down, y'all. This is a bonus world-class speaker secret. And that is, you got to ASK to GET, baby. You got to ASK to GET. You got to ask to get. You have to ask to get. But you can't do this sleazy. You got to do this the right way so that it is elegant. And I'm actually going to give this to you right now. I don't usually give this. I paid $4,000 to one of my world-class speaker coaches to get the script that I'm going to just say right now. You're going to have to write it down though. So I go over there to England, and I'm speaking at a mastermind. I speak at a lot of entrepreneur, like mastermind type groups. They'll bring me in to make sure that people, you know how you learn a lot of stuff in an event, a lot of people leave, they don't take action. Well, I'm the guy they bring in to make sure that team takes action. Okay. They get all the mental trash out of the way, and they actually know what they need to do, and they create a structure to fulfill on that. So I'm at the end of the speech, and I say, you know, a lot of people think that professional speakers are multi-gazillionaires and their calendars are lined with booking after booking after booking after booking, and they're just flowing in. But that's just not true for most people. In fact, for me, 99% of my gigs, my paid gigs, come by way of referral. So if I've said anything today that's really moved you or touched you or inspired you, and you feel like I could make a difference for an entrepreneur group or a sales team, a national sales conference, et cetera, that you know of, you feel like I could really add value, I would be absolutely honored and thrilled to earn your referral. I really would. And I might tell them how they can come up to me at the end or whatever. I might not, or I might just go right into my very best piece of content next, or my very best story next. You never want to end with that. You always want to leave your best stuff for after that. And literally, the guy came up to me at the end, and I'm not going to try my English accent here, especially with a dude from the UK here.
It'd be very entertaining for me if you did, but
okay, I'm going to try it. He says, Clinton, that was so elegant how you asked for referrals right in the middle of your speech. That was so terrible, but that's what he said.
That wasn't bad, actually. That wasn't bad. Well done.
All right, let's go. Let's go, baby. So that's where it became my elegant referral script. elegant referral script from stage. And I do it at every single speaking engagement. In fact, I just did it on this podcast, right?
You did.
So if anybody feels like I can make a difference, like I'd be honored and thrilled to earn your referral. I really would. You can find me at clintonyoung.com. That's where you can actually see me speak, and you can inquire about whether I'm available to come and speak at your sales organization or your national sales conference or whatnot, whatever it is, entrepreneur group. I really would be honored and thrilled. And I appreciate John absolutely for letting me do that. But use that script, y'all. I paid $4,000 to get that script. The gentleman that taught me that script has made hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And guess what happened at that event, John? Someone in the audience came out to me and she said, I need to refer you to somebody. I spoke to the leader of the largest veterinarian community in the UK called Vet Dynamic. I think it's Vet Dynamics, Alan and Vicky. And I was flying back over there several months later. I got my first $10,000 gig ever, and got me over to England again to speak at their national conference. So, and it all came from me asking for that referral from stage. So you got to ASK to GET, baby. If you don't ask for what you want, you're not going to get it. But there's a couple key things I said in there. I just want to leave everybody with this, right? You don't ask for it right at the very end, because then it just looks like you did all that, and then that's all they remember you by. Oh, you just asked for referrals. Leave your best content for right after the ask. That's the key.
So that's a good thing to maybe put into the transition to your close for your talk. I like that. Clinton, this has been a lot of fun. There's so much more we could get into. I think we're going to have to bring you back on in the future for another chat. But this has been fun for me. I hope you've enjoyed it too. And for our listener, if you couldn't find anything to take action on in this episode, I think you might be listening to the wrong podcast. So find one thing, at least one thing that you've heard from Clinton today that you could take action with. The download links are going to be in the show notes for you, and anything else. All the links and everything we talked about today, you will find there. And I will see you again next time. Clinton will invite you back in the future. Thank you for being such a great guest today.
My pleasure, y'all. Think big, say yes, and take action. My final words, 6-word story. Think big, say yes, and take action. Thanks, John. Appreciate you, man.
Very nice. Clinton's referral script is the most immediately actionable thing in this episode, and I'd encourage you to use it, but I don't want it to overshadow the bigger point underneath everything we talked about today. You cannot ask elegantly from a place of uncertainty. The referral works because Clinton has done the reps. He knows his material. He knows the problem he solves. He's not in his head on stage. So he has the presence and clarity to make the ask feel generous rather than desperate. That's the through line of this whole conversation. Reps build presence. Presence builds connection. Connection creates referrals. And referrals, done right, build a speaking business. If you want to go further with this, the transcript for this episode is in the show notes. Use it to pull out Clinton's referral script word for word. In fact, maybe we can even do one better than that. I'm going to ask Claude to pull out the whole script and put it into a PDF document for you, and you can download that directly from the show notes to save you searching for it. Because it's worth getting it right. And look out for a little bonus episode on Friday where I'm going to be talking about my experience bombing in a comedy show last week. Probably don't want to miss that. All right, wherever you're going, whatever you're doing, have an amazing rest of your week. See you next time.